How to Build a Business in a Pandemic. Brought to you by the Business and Brews Show and Trek CBD. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to another episode of How to Start a Business in the Middle of a Pandemic. I'm Ryan Smeltz.
I am Nick Pione.
And what are we talking about today, Nick?
We're going to talk about marketing.
Yes.
Marketing.
Yes.
So I've had the opportunity in my career to work in marketing functions. My background was on the strategy side, so kind of figuring out for a large pharmaceutical company how we were going to launch certain brands in certain spaces. My space was the institutional space when I was in marketing. But overall, I would say is that if you've been watching the show so far with us, and we really hope you are because we're having a lot of fun with this. We're excited, and hopefully you're excited about the idea you have rattling around your head that you want to basically get out and do, give it some life. Yeah. And you want to do that in the middle of a pandemic, which is an awesome time to build a business. But if you've followed us so far, that idea needs a little bit more than just an idea. It needs to know who your customer is, who your market is, how are you going to sell this, whether it's in a store, and you and I talked about different concepts, e-commerce, whatever it is, business to business, whatever it is. And then on top of that, do you have a brand? Like, what does your brand stand for? What's it about? Like, why are you in business? Not just because, hey, we want to sell X to Y. Why are you in business? What is your brand going to stand for? And how are you going to connect that to people, essentially? And then hopefully you've either found a way to fund it, either through your own money, or maybe it's a small business loan, or maybe it's an investor, whatever it is. But if you've watched all that so far, this show is going to bring it all together when essentially, what is marketing? But you want to speak to your customer, right? I mean, that's the way I look at it, right? You want to talk to your customer.
Absolutely. Okay? So I always look at marketing as, making people aware that you exist.
Yep.
And doing just that, speaking to your customer.
That's it.
Advertising is more bringing them in to you.
Yep.
So the great thing about marketing is it can cost you nothing, or it can cost you a ton of money. It's really just a matter of which direction you want to take it and what type of marketing we're talking about.
Man, I love what you just said, because there are certainly a ton of ways to market, and they don't all cost money. But they do all have one thing in common. If you haven't figured out through good market research, right, good customer insight, and when I mean good customer insight, it could be like we talked about in a previous episode. You talking to your friends and your family members about your product or service, and does this have any value to you, right? But if you don't know who that is, the one golden rule of marketing always stands true, which is if you're trying to talk to everybody, you're talking to nobody.
Absolutely.
Pick an audience that you want to talk to and talk to them. So I use my most recent experience, right? We founded Trek CBD, me and my business partner, Scott Brady, and we figured out really quickly that CBD has a really wide berth. But when we're talking about specific marketing ideas and strategies, we're going to talk to a specific audience. And we'll talk more about that in a minute, but it was going to be specific, meaning it's going to be a 35 to 45-year-old female who is, maybe at home with the kids right now in the middle of a pandemic and is stressed out. And then in a separate sentence, we might talk in a totally different campaign. We might talk to the father who is balancing work and whatnot, and they want to speak to essentially him in a different way. Because we all know if you get one of those emails or one of those advertisements that doesn't speak to you, if it's a 22-year-old person in the ad, that doesn't speak to me, who's a 49-year-old male, right? Yeah.
That's awesome. So everything you just said reminds me of when I was doing research to figure out marketing for the e-commerce center that we were starting in Durham.
Yes.
And I found, so this guy's name is Ezra, pretty big Shopify guy. So if you've got a Shopify, you have access to basically their university, and he teaches a lot of classes on there.
Yep.
And one of the classes that he teaches is really fine-tuning that customer avatar.
Yep.
And he gives you a worksheet.
Yep.
And I just went down that. And what's crazy about it is when you first start out looking at that sheet, you're like, it says, where does your customer like to shop?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, man, I don't think I can answer this question. But as you continue, not only as you finish your market research and start to take a look at that
Mm-hmm.
and who your ideal customer is, but as you also reach out to your current customers
Mm-hmm.
and get that feedback, you start to be able to answer more and more of those questions. So
Yeah.
that's something else that I look at that is like a living, breathing thing, because your ideal customer avatar might start here, and as you continue, you realize, oh, and as Gavin likes to say, there's riches in the niches.
There is.
And so that's how you're able to pinpoint that ideal customer avatar. And what I've seen is as I start slightly general and I work more and more specific, once I have that perfect picture painted,
Yes.
I'm able to market so much more effectively.
In that persona you just mentioned again before, if we were working for a large company, Procter and Gamble or whatnot, or the company that I used to work for in pharmaceuticals, we would spend tens of thousands of dollars trying to understand that customer. We would, again, I don't have any idea what it's like as a man, if I'm a woman, to balance a full-time job, right? These days with a family, with a home environment, with everything else. I don't know what that's like. But you know what? I know plenty of successful and talented women around me that I can sit down and talk to them and say, hey, you know what is it like to balance all those things at once? Because I only know it from a male perspective. I don't understand it from your shoes, essentially, right? And the same thing, right? So getting into the mind of your customer doesn't take a lot of money. It doesn't take what they call behind the glass research. It could just be simply you having a cup of coffee with a friend, or these days over a Zoom meeting, and saying, just tell me what it's like to walk a mile in your shoes. And I want to understand that because I want to be able to connect the product or service I have to a customer like you.
That's super important.
Yep.
So all that being said, I kind of want to talk about like the different options that someone has.
Yeah.
Especially because I know when I started out, word of mouth was pretty much my only strength, especially when it came to marketing.
Okay.
So basically, like you were just talking about, sitting down with someone, not just asking them those questions, but also when somebody came in, whether it was the bookstore or I was online or whatever, and somebody being like, oh, hey, this guy's really good when it comes to books. He has a wide selection. He's got really great customer service. That was pretty much my only strength. When it came to email marketing, when it came to social media, I had to learn all of it. I had to learn all of it from the ground up. And obviously, I've got, right now I have 3 binders at home that was given to me in way of homework from a guy named Dan Kennedy.
Okay.
So I've got to go through that, and that deals with email marketing. So I'm still learning a lot as it relates to stuff like that. But really, that word of mouth being my strength is something that I understand. And then just seeing that email and social media and so many other mediums when it comes to marketing are options. What would you say, Nick, is like, if somebody's starting out, what do you believe they should start with?
Right.
And how do you believe they should grow the marketing arm of their business?
Yeah. Great question. And as you're starting off, budget is a reality. You don't have a marketing budget of a huge company, so you need to maximize every dollar, right? Every single dollar, and it has to have return at the end of the day. So when you think about that, knowing your customer, number one, and that's going to evolve over time. So the best thing about having a business, whether it's in e-commerce or whatnot, is that you're going to gain customers. And just remember, you can always, when you talk about email marketing, have a conversation with those customers. So it doesn't cost you a bunch of money in research. That's what you want to have a conversation with. But I would say start with the basics, I would say. I mean, in my opinion, is that from a marketing standpoint, know your mission, know your strategy that we talked about in the last episode. But then on top of that, you got to have a Facebook page, right? If you're a retail presence, you got to have a Yelp page, and these are all free, right? It doesn't cost you $1 essentially to have that, right? Hopefully you have a website where people can discover you from that aspect. And again, all different types, but there's plenty of templated websites out there that you can create on your own and have hosted for less than $100 a month. Because the reality is, in today's day and age, people are going to Google you and they're going to find you through your website.
Yep.
A Google My Business page is a great way to go. But then after that, I would say, what can you do essentially with what you have? So day one, you develop one customer. How can you then, again, have a conversation with that customer to help them develop into another customer? So from a referral standpoint, and maybe it's a couple weeks after the sale because you want to build some trust with that person, but how do you then develop that one person into a referral source for you? How well known are you in the community? We spent a lot of time at Trek CBD just knocking on doors. Didn't cost us anything. We actually didn't even have any marketing materials. All we had was a website, was a Facebook page, and a business card, and we got to know people that we knew could refer to us. In one instance, it was like chiropractors. We love chiropractors because chiropractors are in the same business as us. They help people move more, and they help people with pain. And at the end of the day, we knew that if we could build trust with them, they would become a referral source for us. So we started off that way in just, again, building through the networks you probably already have, through your own personal Facebook network, through your own personal LinkedIn, then just telling your story, which again, I'm going to shamefully plug for the other couple episodes, but telling your story, telling your mission, and gaining followership. But then, like I said, when you get the followership, then it's about building a conversation with them. And if somebody likes your page, reaching out to them and saying, hey, I saw you liked our page. We're doing this. This is our mission. It always starts with the mission, right? This is what we're trying to do. Do you know anybody that could help us with this? Word of mouth. And then eventually you're going to get to a place when you've built it up where you might actually want to pay for some advertising. And there's a whole lot of resources out there, YouTube, LinkedIn Learning, where you can learn how to market in the digital space. And we're not going to go into that today. We're not going to go into how you can actually market through Facebook or through Instagram. But I can tell you it's everything we've talked about before in terms of who is your customer, who are you, how are you going to create value and connect that to your customer.
Yes.
That's all it's about.
Yeah.
It's about that. We can talk about in a few minutes about positioning and branding and all those kind of things. You're looking at a couple products behind us here on the screen that we developed here at Trek CBD. But at the end of the day, none of that goes anywhere unless you are fulfilling a need and creating value to connect to that need.
Yeah. 100%.
Yep.
You mentioned 2 seconds ago about like Facebook and Instagram, and I will tell you from experience, if you don't create that solid foundation, if you do not know who your ideal customer avatar is, and you go spending money on Facebook ads, you will be greatly disappointed.
You will.
Your cost per click is going to be way too high. You're not going to see an ROI. Then you're going to get frustrated and upset because I've been there.
Yep.
And I've spent that money. I've spent other people's money doing it.
Yep.
Working to advertise and build businesses and create attention around something that I didn't start with a solid foundation.
Yep.
So it's super important, especially when you talk about creating that conversation between you and your customer, like really knowing and understanding not just what you're going to need to be talking about. So you mentioned earlier about building trust.
Yep.
So you don't always have to be talking business with your customer.
No.
But maintaining that open line of communication like you guys do with Trek CBD. I get the emails all the time. So sometimes it's talking about the school year ending, the summer ending, what's coming up, what people are doing to prepare for it. Here's a helpful link for a couple of resources. Here's what we're doing to prepare for it. It's creating like a conversation where you guys are a family and maybe I'm part of it. So it's really an open-ended conversation. It's not salesy. It's not always talking about, your products.
Yep.
Come buy our stuff. So that right there just tells me that, Trek CBD knows and understands who their audience is. They've obviously effectively communicated through email because those are coming out consistently. and they're about topics and things that people care about, especially as it relates to family and community.
Yeah, we quickly identified, and this is like a marketing term, right? But what is your value proposition? Like, what do you offer the customer, right? So it's like, Uber is like rides in minutes. So really crisp and simple, like rides in minutes. We help people experience the many therapeutic benefits of CBD through three simple things: education, quality, and value. And if you follow us on Instagram, and we hope you do, if you follow us on Facebook, we pulse those three different strategies throughout our campaigns. Some of them are just about our brand. We want to have a very positive, upbeat brand. So you'll see just motivational, inspirational things, testimonials from our customers and whatnot about that. You'll see the education piece where we'll actually either create content. We have a blog, but we're not doing it from the standpoint that we're trying to drive SEO and get more. We're really doing it because we feel, because we know our customers, that they have certain things on their mind that we want to, in our own voice, write a blog. Okay, we do that video too as well too. And the third piece is, and it's kind of the most basic piece, right, is we're a retail store, an e-commerce site, so we provide value. Right, so when you look at the gummies on the screen there, we create a collaboration with one of the top gummy manufacturers that say to everybody $2 a bag. So we want to communicate that as like an offer to say this is the value, but it all stems around those three things, around education, quality, and value, to keep our customer base engaged and not just, again, because that's who we are, just constantly just pulse out $10 off or 20% off or all this stuff, because that's not going to get people to follow you. It's not going to get people through their buying decision, whether it's and we can talk about this a little bit, but when you're out there marketing, you hear people talk about the funnel.
Yeah.
Right. So what does the funnel mean? And there's, by the way, go Google this one if you're not familiar with the term, the marketing funnel. There's about 20 different versions of this, right?
Yeah.
But the marketing funnel, if you picture it, you got top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, essentially. So top of the funnel is, hey, I'm just going to put something in front of you. You are completely cold to me. You have no idea what CBD is in this instance, right? And that's it. So I got to pulse something at you that's going to keep you engaged, or want to engage with it, rather. So then I can move you to the middle of the funnel where you're saying, okay, and I'll give you an example of this in a second, where people are like, wow, okay, I'm curious about CBD. This whatever it was, this tactic got me more curious about it. Now I'm actually in my evaluation phase where I'm looking around and I'm trying to see what it is I need and where I'm going to buy it from, until we move somebody to the bottom of the funnel where they're actually ready to buy. And of course, it's a funnel, so it gets more condensed as it goes, right? You're going to lose a lot more people in the top of the funnel. You're going to get more people in the middle of the funnel, down to the point where it's a really smaller amount of people where, they're ready to make a buying decision. And that's what we want to do. Not with purpose in terms of selling them a product, but we believe, based on our market research, that people are curious about CBD. They're confused about CBD, but we know that at the end of the day, this is a decision why they're coming to us about their health. So whether it's us, and we'd like it to be us, don't get me wrong, where they buy their CBD, we want to help them move along that journey, because we started this business to help people. And we're a business, so I want it to be with us, and that's in our value proposition. But if not, I want it to be with somebody, so you can get to a better place on the journey to wellness, which is what Trek is all about.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I like that you talked about the funnel, because so many people are unfamiliar with that. And I think it's super important to understand it and understand how it works. And it's not super complicated.
It's not at all.
Just knowing that some of the people that you talk to, most of the people that you talk to, either don't know your industry, your product, or you. And that's the introduction to it. And it's super important to make sure that contains as much information as possible that points them in the right direction, which kind of brings us back to the whole branding aspect.
Yes.
Because people might just drive by here and they see your sign, and now they've gone from cold to, oh, there's a CBD store right there.
And that was part of our strategy. So I'm glad you brought that up, because we decided to put CBD in our name. And you'll go listen to a bunch of podcasts if you're a CBD enthusiast, and they'll tell you, don't ever put CBD in your name. But if we were to put something on the outside of the building that was like Trek Vitality, Trek Hemp, Trek whatever, people would drive by and say, oh, yeah, I've been meaning to get some hemp rope or some hemp clothes, and they wouldn't know what it was. But because CBD already had a buzz around it, it's being Googled a bunch, people are learning more about the therapeutic benefits of it, it was important to us, even though it might cause us some pain, to put it out there to say, this is who we are from the jump. We are that. We're not shrouded in some sort of veil where people are going to have to figure it out. It's right up there. It's right up front. And that was important to us to be able to communicate to the audience that we wanted to communicate to. But I like, honestly, you and I are liking the fact that I like to keep things simple. And the marketing funnel does not have to be complicated at all. And if you want to get complicated about it, Google it. That's fine. But it doesn't have to be. But you do have to know your customer, and you do have to know your strategies in terms of what you need to do to win, to get people through that funnel so they can make the best informed decision for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And what a lot of people are going to find, especially when they start to dive into the Facebook, the Instagram, the email, the chat, the text messaging, is that funnel applies to each and every single one of those.
Right.
And knowing when to engage, disengage, and re-engage different customers along their journey is super important, because that's what's not only going to re-warm the customers who maybe they bought from you, a couple of months ago, and you just want to remind them that, hey, if you need any help or you have any questions, we're here, and also keep you from sending an email to the same person 10 times a day.
Completely. Again, if you're talking to everybody, you're talking to no one. So like in our business, people usually fall into three primary, segments. Essentially, if you talk about marketing, you talk about segmenting out your customers. But three primary segments, you've got anxiety, you've got pain and inflammation, and you've got sleep. Now, there's other ones. You look around the store, pet care, all that. But those are the three main ones, right? So we try to, when we speak to people in terms of whether it's education or whether it's the value portion of it, we try to speak to you with a product that's going to resonate and connect with you. No matter what the strategy is, whether we're trying to get you to try a new product, support the product you're already on, it doesn't matter. The strategies can change in terms of that. But when we speak to you, we don't want to be talking to you about sleep when you're in your early 20s and you don't have any sleep problems, versus somebody like me who's a year away from being 50 and sleep's a precious commodity, right? That's different. So we try to, as much as we can, we're not perfect at it, as much as we can, speak to a really specific customer, okay? And then leave the broad stuff to like our brand. Like, hey, we want to make sure that, we want to remind people about who we are as a brand. That can speak to everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. But specifically when it comes down to products and branding, we want to speak directly as we can.
That's awesome.
Yep.
I like it, man. I definitely had my struggles, especially when it came to the emailing, but understanding those different segments and your branding and those conversations, just your ideal customer, and being able to, bundle it all up and make good use of it is super important.
And especially considering the fact that I don't care what you read or whatnot, no one has this figured out. Marketing is trial and error. You're trying to minimize the failure by understanding your customer. But at the end of the day, you know what? That's why in marketing, and again, if you talk about split campaigns are using the same image, right, in two different ads with different copy, or the same copy with two different images. But what does that tell you in itself? Because marketers actually have a term like this called A/B testing or whatever, split campaigns. Yeah. It just shows you that you're trying to figure it out along the way.
Yeah.
But if there's one thing I want everyone to take away from this episode today, is that don't ever overlook your most valuable resource, which is the customers that are buying from you today. Or if you're just starting your business on day one, the customers you think that are going to buy from you, meaning your friends, your family. Go out on the street if you need to gather, or stand outside of a supermarket if you need to gather, customer insight. But either way, speak to the customers that you already have versus going out there and paying somebody for market research that's not relevant to your area. Use what you have at your disposal. Learn from them. Don't be obviously too proud to change what you're doing if it's not resonating with the customer, but just keep that conversation going. Marketing is about a conversation between you and your customer, and the more you learn and the more open you are, more success you're going to have.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, Nick, I I'm sure we could talk about marketing all night.
I could.
I am definitely interested and curious about the questions we'll get surrounding this episode, because, you know, when you guys ask us questions as it relates to whether it's marketing or branding or market research or funding, you know, we're going to take those questions, and if it requires a more in-depth answer, you might get an entire episode out of it, because we are here to help. We are looking forward to your questions. It's really easy to get in touch with us. Everything is in the show notes. All the links, all the resources, everything that we could possibly put together for you. And just reach out to us. Ask us those questions. Ask us the easy questions, but ask us the hard questions too. And if you're lucky, you'll get a whole episode out of it, and we'll just dive deeper.
Let's keep going. I'm having fun with this. I know you are too. At the fiber of our being is, you and I are both entrepreneurs, and we know what it's like to be sitting on a great idea that you want to bring into execution. And you know what? We don't talk about this enough, but we also know how scary that can be too. I left a job to do this. I had to convince my wife this was the right thing to do. But if you've got the right passion, if you've done the right research, nothing is 100% failure free. But if you're willing to put in the work and learn from those that have walked before you, you're going to minimize your chance for failure, for sure.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
So up next, we're talking about products. We're talking about, you know, specifically private label. I know you've got a couple right here.
Right.
So some people don't know this, but PLR is a common term in Amazon world.
Yep.
Private label rights. And we're going to dig deeper into that.
I'm excited to hear about you, because you've been a master at, you know, just finding products like we talked about in the previous episode, and then positioning them in like a marketplace like Amazon. So I'm really excited to hear more about that with you in terms of how you've done that before. So I'm excited.
Coming up next,
ladies
and gentlemen. Yeah,
all right.
Awesome. See you on the next episode.
Looking forward to it.
How to build a business during a pandemic. This show is brought to you by Trek CBD. You can check them out at trekcbd.com. Written and produced by the Business and Brew Show. Find more episodes at businessandbrewshow.com. Hosted by Nick Pione and Ryan Smelt. Guest host Gavin